Have you noticed this trend in the last few decades of small children having near-death experiences and then coming back to report to the rest of us what God, Jesus, and heaven are actually like? Well, stay tuned and we're going to investigate two of these claims and what they stated their actual evidence was. I've read about many accounts of near-death experiences, and I find these recounts fascinating, especially when the person has been clinically dead for a significant amount of time, say a few hours, which has been documented in the past. And their accounts of what the afterlife is really like, the life reviews, and the messages that some of them bring back aren't really in line with the Christian fundamentalist worldview. It's a very interesting topic to think about. Is it just a dreamlike state of the brain's hyperactivity during the transition into the blackness of oblivion? Or did these people really experience an afterlife? I hope they did, for I would really like to think that's the way things work out in this universe after your final breath. But over a decade ago, we had a frenzy that spread like a grass fire in the Christian fundamentalist community, involving the near-death experiences of a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. And it was the Christian fundamentalist media, largely evangelical, that was pouring the gasoline on this wildfire. One of these tales made the family exceedingly rich without the credibility to deserve it, and the other, in the end, as you will see, was shown to be a hoax. The first near-death experience tale of a child comes from the now very well-known Burpo family. Colton Burpo, at 4 years old, underwent an emergency appendix surgery in 2003, and the surgery went south, and yes, he did almost die. After being revived, 4-year-old Colton reported to his family that he had actually gone to heaven, sat on Jesus' lap, even described him as wearing a purple sash. He described angels, met his great-grandfather, met his miscarried dead sister that he had never known on earth. And according to his father, an evangelist pastor, he couldn't have possibly known all these things. It had to be legitimate. And of course, like many evangelists, Todd Burpo used this story to his advantage, had a book published, Heaven is for Real, co-authored with Lynn Vincent. The book was eventually made into a movie, subsequent books were written on the matter, and now the Burpo family is filthy rich. Did anybody besides Todd Burpo actually investigate the integrity of this story? First of all, let's look at Todd Burpo's co-author, Lynn Vincent. She's a Christian fundamentalist who belongs to the Horizon Fellowship in San Diego. And this is going to be my first point of contention. I do not trust Todd Burpo in anything that he says because he's not only an evangelist, he's an evangelist pastor. I have shown in prior videos that evangelists will lie, historically and scientifically, to try to propagate their worldview. I do not believe that the co-author, Lynn Vincent, will do anything except to advance the faith that she is entrenched with. Because remember, the evangelist isn't a Christian, the evangelist is a fanatic. But let's look at Todd Burpo's actual claims. He's trying to state that his kid described Jesus in heaven, and that there's no way he could have known how to describe him. Sure there is. Your father's a pastor. In his brief years, all he had was prior descriptions of Jesus, and angels, and heaven. Put that together with a child's imagination in a dreamlike state, and there you have it. Todd Burpo also states that Colton couldn't have possibly known about his dead sister from what was an apparent miscarriage. Sure he could have. I'm sure the parents talked about it within earshot of him in the past. How many times have children listened to things when adults didn't realize they were listening? How many times has a child repeated something that they heard that the parent really wished that they hadn't repeated? Then Todd Burpo says that Colton looked at a picture of his dead great-grandfather and identified him as a person he saw in heaven. You're talking about a 4-year-old. When I was 4 years old, I probably could have identified a villain that wreaked havoc on our neighborhood named Rocco that only existed in my mind. And it's really funny how Colton Burpo's story became more elaborate with time, because I'm sure the father, an evangelist pastor, wasn't influencing him every day. And the Burpos could look at me and say all of this are just my opinions, and they'd be right. But here's what's not my opinion. Colton Burpo was never clinically dead. Let me repeat that because all the evangelists apparently missed it on their vlogs. Colton Burpo never died. So here is once again a fabrication coming from the Christian fundamentalist that is making a family a lot of money. This story was very similar to another near-death experience of a 6-year-old that isn't as widely known, named Alex Malarkey. Alex was involved in a car crash in 2004 that left him a quadriplegic. And the 6-year-old, largely aided by his father, concocted a similar story of transporting to heaven, talking to Jesus, angels, and even the devil, and his family put the words in print with Tyndale House, a Christian publishing company, titling the work The Boy Who Went to Heaven. And the Christian fundamentalists went nuts on this story too, even though, like Burpo, Alex never clinically died. And all the fundamentalist media were lighting that gas fire for his story as well. Until in 2015, Alex Malarkey, now a teenager, admitted that he made the whole thing up under the influence of his father. And I don't have any hate on this kid, who is now in his early 20s, as he's still in that wheelchair and didn't even get any money from his father's fraudulent story. That book has been pulled from the shelf since. But the Burpo family still has a river of cash flowing into their house, because Colton Burpo has yet to admit what Alex Malarkey admitted years ago, that this story is illegitimate. Regardless of what you say, how your father portrays it, all these so-called proofs that you seem to have, your tale is completely debunked because of the fact that you were never clinically dead. Case closed. In the fundamentalist Christian group, we'll wonder why I keep calling them fanatics, cult members. Absolutely devoid from the land of reality. Because even though it is absolutely provable 100% fact that the kid was never clinically dead, your cult still believes it. Just like when your theories of science that supposedly prove Genesis are completely debunked, you continue to dig in your heels. I have read many accounts of near-death experiences, and honestly, I hope they're right. I would love to know that my soul doesn't just cease and actually goes someplace else. But what we know for fact about the Colton Burpo tale is that heaven was not real for him at all. And while we're on the subject of great fiction, if you'd like to read about what I think the apocalypse will be like if Christ ever returned, a highly irreverent novel guaranteed to offend the fundamentalist, check out my book, The Second Fall. Link is on Amazon in the video description as well as the banner, and I will see you next time as we take that sword of reason and reality and thrust it into the heart of ignorance.